Courthouses were built to serve justice. They were meant to be places where truth was spoken, guilt was weighed, and fate was decided under the law. But across Arkansas, there are courthouses that no longer echo with gavels or verdicts. They stand abandoned, forgotten by time, their doors locked and windows dark. Yet when night falls, these buildings feel far from empty. Footsteps echo through courtrooms where no one sits. Voices whisper from holding cells sealed for decades. Cold drafts move through hallways that should be sealed shut. Some say the walls remember every verdict. Every scream. Every life changed forever. Tonight, we journey through Arkansas to uncover the most haunted abandoned courthouses, places where justice ended, but unrest began. Hello, my dear friend. I hope you are safe and comfortable, because what we are about to explore is steeped in judgment, sorrow, and unfinished stories. Arkansas is rich in history. Its courthouses once stood at the heart of every town, witnessing trials, executions, false accusations, and desperate pleas for mercy. Not all justice was fair. Not all verdicts were true. Some prisoners died awaiting trial. Some were condemned despite their innocence. Some never left the building alive. When these courthouses were abandoned, the people left. But the emotions did not. They see shadowy figures standing where defendants once stood. They feel sudden fear, anger, and sorrow without knowing why. Before we step inside, let me ask you this. If you were alone in an abandoned courthouse at midnight and heard a gavel slam behind you, would you turn around to face it, or would you run without looking back? Take a slow breath. And let us enter the haunted abandoned courthouses of Arkansas. The Old Jefferson County Courthouse stands with a solemn presence, its stone walls darkened by time and memory. Built to represent order and justice, it once presided over some of the harshest trials in the region. By day, the building appears quiet and dignified, its architecture reflecting authority and permanence. Yet even in sunlight, there is a weight to the place that visitors often feel the moment they step inside. The interior is cool and still. Long hallways stretch past closed doors. Their floors worn smooth by countless footsteps. High ceilings trap sound, creating echoes that linger longer than expected. The air feels heavy, as though it has absorbed decades of tension and unresolved emotion. Conversations naturally grow softer here, guided by an instinctive sense of restraint. As evening approaches, the courthouse takes on a different character. Shadows gather in corners and along stairwells. The sounds of the outside world fade, replaced by an unsettling quiet. It is during these hours that visitors and staff report the most unusual experiences. From empty courtrooms, muffled arguments are sometimes heard drifting through the halls. The voices are indistinct, layered over one another in low, tense tones. They rise and fall like fragments of heated debate, never forming clear words. The sound feels trapped within the walls, replaying moments of conflict long after the room has been vacated. Those who hear the arguments often pause, listening closely. The voices seem to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. When doors are opened, the courtroom is always empty. Bench seats sit undisturbed. Papers lie exactly as they were left. Late at night, another sound is reported with unsettling consistency. The slow drag of metal across stone. Chains. The noise moves deliberately along the floor, heavy and measured. Echoing down corridors and across empty rooms. It is never hurried. Each sound arrives with a pause, then continues. As if someone is being led from one place to another. Those who investigate find no source. No loose equipment. No maintenance tools. The floors remain bare and silent once the sound stops. Yet the echo stays with those who hear it. replaying in their thoughts long after the building returns to quiet. The judge's bench is often described as the coldest place in the courthouse. Even during warm days, the air near it feels noticeably colder. Visitors stepping into this area report a sudden chill that seems to rise from the floor itself. The sensation is sharp and immediate, causing breath to catch and skin to tighten. Some describe the feeling as being observed. Not watched from a distance, but assessed. As though someone unseen still stands there, weighing actions and intent. The cold does not spread evenly. It gathers in that single space, holding its ground while the rest of the room remains unchanged. The courthouse has seen countless lives pass through its doors. Decisions made here altered futures, separated families, and carried consequences that extended far beyond the courtroom walls. While the legal proceedings have long since ended, many believe the emotional weight of those moments never fully left. Staff members who work late shifts speak quietly about their experiences. Footsteps echo behind them in empty corridors. Doors close gently on their own. The building seems to respond to movement, settling and shifting as if aware of who is present. These moments are treated with respect rather than fear. There is no sense of chaos here. The atmosphere is controlled, restrained, much like the proceedings that once took place within these walls. Arguments echo where debates once unfolded. Chains drag where prisoners were led. Cold gathers where judgment was passed. Visitors touring the courthouse during the day often feel a lingering unease without knowing why. The building does not announce its history loudly. It allows the weight of its past to reveal itself slowly, through silence and subtle shifts in atmosphere. Through silence and subtle shifts in atmosphere. Those who stay after hours describe a deeper connection to the space. The courthouse feels active, even when empty. The sense of presence does not feel malicious, but it is intense. It carries authority, expectation, and consequence. As night deepens, the building grows quieter, but the tension does not ease. Sounds become more pronounced. Every breath feels noticeable. The courthouse seems to hold on to the darkness, unwilling to fully release it until morning. When dawn arrives, sunlight fills the hallways once more. The cold near the bench fades. The echoes retreat. The courthouse returns to stillness. To an outside observer, it appears unchanged, historic building standing silently in the present. Yet those who have heard the arguments without speakers, the chains without prisoners, and felt the cold of judgment without a judge know the difference. They leave with the sense that the Old Jefferson County Courthouse is not merely a structure, but a vessel of memory. It stands as a reminder that places where power was once exercised do not forget their purpose. Justice may no longer be delivered here. But the echoes of its weight remain. In the quiet halls and empty courtrooms. Something still lingers. Listening, remembering, and holding judgment in the cold air long after the final verdict was spoken. Hidden behind thick overgrown trees and tangled vines, the abandoned Franklin County Courthouse stands in quiet isolation. From the road, it is barely visible, its stone exterior softened by time and neglect. Its stone exterior softened by time and neglect. Nature has slowly reclaimed the grounds, roots pressing against cracked steps, branches brushing darkened windows. By day, the building feels forgotten. By night, it feels aware. The courthouse was once a place of order and judgment. Voices filled its halls, footsteps echoed through corridors. And decisions were made that shaped lives. Now, the doors remain closed, and silence dominates the structure. Yet that silence is not empty. It carries a weight, as if the building remembers every word ever spoken within its walls. Entering the courthouse feels like stepping into a paused moment. Dust coats the floors, and sunlight filters through broken panes in narrow beams. The air is stale, holding the scent of old paper, damp stone, and something faintly metallic. Every movement seems louder than it should be, each step echoing longer than expected. Deep within the lower levels lie the holding cells. These rooms are small and cold, built to confine and isolate. Visitors who explore this area often report hearing whispers rising from within the cells. The sounds are low and indistinct, overlapping softly as if multiple voices are speaking at once. They never form clear words, but the tone feels intentional. The tone feels intentional. But the tone feels intentional. But the tone feels intentional. 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 The whispers seem to drift upward, brushing past ears and then fading back into silence. When listeners pause to focus, the sound diminishes, as though retreating. When they move on, it returns, following at a distance. The experience leaves many with the sense of being overheard rather than haunted. Above the cells, long corridors stretch toward courtrooms that have not seen use in decades. Doors line the halls, their frames warped and paint peeling. Some of these doors move on their own. Without warning, a sharp slam echoes through the building, sudden and forceful, breaking the stillness completely. The sound reverberates through the courthouse, bouncing off stone walls and wooden ceilings. It feels purposeful, not the result of wind or decay. Sometimes the silence returns immediately. Other times, another door slams somewhere deeper inside, impossible to locate. The courthouse seems to decide when to break its own silence. Each slam feels like punctuation in a conversation no one can hear fully. The building does not creak or groan continuously. These moments create a sense of unpredictability. The main courtroom remains the most unsettling space. Rows of benches face the front, coated in dust and shadow. The judge's bench looms above, empty and still. Light barely reaches this room, leaving much of it in darkness even during the day. Some visitors claim to see figures seated silently in the jury box. These shapes appear solid at first glance, sitting upright and facing forward. They do not move or acknowledge presence. Their posture suggests attention, as though waiting for proceedings to begin. When observers look again, the figures are gone. The jury box stands empty, untouched. No sound accompanies their disappearance. There are no footsteps, no shifting shadows. Only the unsettling certainty that something was there moments before. Those who experience this often feel compelled to leave the room immediately. The sensation is not panic, but discomfort, as though remaining would be disrespectful. Others linger, hoping the figures will reappear, but they never do on command. The courthouse seems to hold on to its former purpose. The layout encourages stillness and observation. Even now, the rooms feel arranged for listening and judgment. The air feels heavy with attention, as though every visitor is being weighed quietly. People who spend time inside report changes in mood. Conversations become hushed. Movements slow. A sense of seriousness settles in, unrelated to fear alone. It feels like entering a space that demands restraint, even after abandonment. Late in the day, shadows stretch across the courtroom floor, filling the jury box and benches with darkness. Sounds from outside disappear behind thick walls. Inside, every breath feels amplified. Some visitors describe hearing whispers again at this hour, no longer confined to the cells. The sound seems to drift through the hallways, rising and falling like distant discussion. It never approaches fully, never resolves into clarity. It simply exists. Despite its condition, the courthouse does not feel empty. It feels occupied by memory. Each room carries an impression of what once happened there. The holding cells remember confinement. The courtroom remembers judgment. The jury box remembers silent observation. Not everyone who enters experiences something unusual. Some walk through without incident, seeing only decay and dust. Others encounter one unexplained moment and leave unsettled. The experiences are inconsistent, personal, and difficult to predict. Those who leave early often struggle to explain why. They speak of discomfort, of pressure, of feeling watched. Rarely do they describe specific events. The building affects them in quieter ways. As night falls, the courthouse becomes nearly invisible behind trees and darkness. Inside, the silence deepens. Doors remain still. The whispers fade. The courtroom sits empty, benches facing forward as they always have. By morning, sunlight returns, softening the structure once more. The building looks abandoned again, lifeless and still. The sounds and figures feel distant, almost unreal. Yet those who experienced them know otherwise. The memory lingers, sharp and persistent. The sense of being observed does not fade easily. The abandoned Franklin County Courthouse continues to stand, hidden and forgotten by most. It does not call attention to itself. It waits quietly, holding on to echoes of voices, slammed doors, and silent figures seated in judgment. And for those who step inside, the courthouse offers more than history. It offers the unsettling reminder that some places never stop listening, even after everyone else has gone. The old Monroe County Courthouse stands with quiet authority, its stone walls bearing the weight of decades shaped by judgment, uncertainty, and unrest. By day, the building appears dignified and restrained, a symbol of order set firmly in place. Sunlight touches its windows and steps, softening the severity of its design and giving little hint of the emotional history sealed inside. This courthouse once stood at the center of turbulent times. Countless trials unfolded within these walls when tensions ran high and outcomes carried lasting consequences. Voices once filled the chambers, arguments echoing upward as decisions were weighed carefully, sometimes under great pressure. The building absorbed every moment, from hopeful anticipation to crushing disappointment, storing them quietly as years passed. When the courthouse grew older and its busiest days faded, silence took hold. The rooms emptied, footsteps became rare, and the steady rhythm of daily proceedings came to an end. Yet the stillness did not erase what had happened here. Instead, it seemed to give those memories space to surface in unexpected ways. Visitors entering the courthouse often remark on the immediate change in atmosphere. The air feels cooler inside, heavier, as though it carries more than dust and age. Sounds behave differently here, traveling farther than expected, then cutting off abruptly. Even casual footsteps seem louder, echoing back with a delay that feels almost deliberate. It is on the upper floors that the most common reports begin. Footsteps are heard pacing back and forth above empty rooms. The sound is slow and repetitive, not hurried, as if someone is walking with purpose but nowhere to go. Each step lands clearly, heel to floor, then turns and repeats the path again. Those below often pause, listening, certain that someone must be there. When they investigate, the floors are empty. Doors stand open or closed exactly as they were. No movement is found. No explanation fits the steady rhythm that was heard moments earlier. The footsteps do not flee or fade gradually. They simply stop, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than before. The stairwell holds its own unsettling presence. From time to time, the sound of a man crying echoes through the open space. The voice is low and strained, carrying sorrow rather than fear. It rises from below or above without clear direction, filling the stairwell before fading away. Those who hear it describe an overwhelming sense of grief that seems to settle into the walls themselves. The crying never lasts long. It begins suddenly, continues for several seconds, then disappears without warning. No footsteps accompany it. No door opens. The sound leaves behind a stillness that feels deeply personal, as if the building has briefly revealed a private moment never meant to be shared. No one is ever found. Staff, caretakers, and visitors have searched the stairwells and upper floors repeatedly after hearing these sounds. Each time, they find only empty corridors and quiet rooms. The courthouse offers no sign of disturbance beyond what was heard. Some believe the pacing footsteps belong to someone who never found resolution here. A figure bound to routine, replaying moments of waiting, deliberation, or regret. Others believe the crying reflects the emotional weight of the trials themselves. Decisions made within these walls altered lives in ways that could not be undone. Loss, injustice, relief, and despair all passed through the courthouse at different times. The building may have absorbed those emotions, releasing them when the environment grows quiet enough to notice. The courthouse does not feel hostile. There are no sudden loud crashes, no aggressive movement, no sense of being chased. Instead, the sounds do not seek attention. They emerge briefly, then retreat, as if bound by rules that limit how much can be revealed. The high ceilings and long corridors create a sense of exposure. Even in daylight, the building feels attentive, as though it remembers everyone who enters. This awareness grows stronger after dark, when shadows stretch across the floors and familiar shapes take on deeper contrast. Those who remain inside during evening hours describe an increased sensitivity to sound. A distant creak feels closer than it should. A soft movement echoes longer than expected. The building seems to amplify every noise, then absorb it completely, leaving no trace behind. The Old Monroe County Courthouse has witnessed more than legal proceedings. It has seen fear carried into its chambers, hope whispered into its corners, and sorrow held quietly on its staircases. Over time, those emotions layered themselves into the structure, becoming part of its identity rather than fading away. Visitors who experience the footsteps or the crying often carry the memory long after leaving. The sounds replay in thought, not as fear, but as unanswered questions. Who walked those floors? Who cried in that stairwell? What moment was being repeated? Morning light changes the experience. Sunlight returns warmth to the stone, and the courthouse feels once again like a historic building rather than an emotional space. The sounds cease. The stairwell remains quiet. The upper floors offer no sign of activity. Yet the stories remain consistent. Different people, different days, same experiences. Footsteps pacing the upper floors. A man crying in the stairwell. No one ever found. The courthouse continues to stand, preserved and respected. It does not announce its past or demand belief. It simply exists, holding the weight of what once unfolded inside. When silence settles deeply enough, that history seems to surface on its own. As evening returns, and the building grows quiet, the halls listen. Footsteps may begin again above empty rooms. A voice may echo briefly through the stairwell. And within the Old Monroe County Courthouse, the past continues to move softly through the present. Unseen, unheard by many, but never truly gone. The abandoned Lafayette County Courthouse stands at the edge of town, its stone FAA section Ade weathered by years of neglect and quiet observation. Windows stare outward like unblinking eyes, reflecting the sky by day and swallowing darkness by night. The building no longer serves its original purpose, yet it has not released what it once held. From the moment someone steps inside, the atmosphere feels dense, as though the air itself carries memory. The entrance hall opens into a wide interior where footsteps echo too loudly for the size of the space. Dust coats the floor, undisturbed except for the occasional trail left by curious visitors. Sunlight filters through tall windows in narrow beams, illuminating floating particles that drift slowly, as if time moves differently here. The courthouse was once a place of judgment and consequence. Voices filled these rooms, decisions were weighed, and lives changed within these walls. Even now, the layout preserves that sense of order and authority. Corridors lead deliberately toward the courtroom, guiding movement as they once guided processions of officials, witnesses, and the accused. As visitors approach the courtroom, many report a sudden change in how their bodies feel. Pressure builds in the chest without warning, not sharp or painful, but heavy and constricting. Breathing becomes more deliberate, as though the air resists being drawn in. The sensation often fades when stepping away, only to return when moving closer again. Inside the courtroom, the feeling intensifies. The space is larger, the ceiling higher, yet the air feels thicker here than anywhere else in the building. Sound behaves strangely. Even whispered words seem to linger, hanging in the space long after they are spoken. The witness stand remains in place, worn smooth by countless hands. It stands slightly elevated, still commanding attention despite the room's abandonment. Visitors often find their eyes drawn to it without understanding why. It feels like a focal point, a place where unseen attention gathers. It is near this stand that a shadowy figure is most often reported. The form appears briefly, upright and still, darker than the surrounding shadows. Those who see it describe the same details. The figure lacks clear features, more an absence of light than a shape with edges. It appears for only a moment, long enough to be recognized, then fades back into the room. Looking directly at the spot reveals nothing unusual, only empty space and silence. The sighting is often followed by a sudden increase in pressure, not just in the chest, but throughout the body. The room feels heavier, as if gravity has shifted slightly. Some describe a sense of being evaluated, not by sight, but by presence. The feeling is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, persistent, and deeply uncomfortable. The air in the courtroom carries a particular weight. Visitors frequently struggle to explain it, settling on words like charged or tense. It feels thick with accusation, as though the room remembers every word once spoken here. The walls seem to hold arguments and verdicts within their stone, releasing them only as sensation rather than sound. Standing near the center of the room can bring a sudden wave of unease. Thoughts feel sharper, more intrusive. People report an urge to speak, then immediately suppress it, as if the room demands silence. Others feel compelled to leave without fully understanding why. Those who linger too long often describe headaches or fatigue that appear quickly and fade just as quickly once outside. The courthouse seems to take something from its visitors, if only briefly, before releasing them back into the open air. Staff members and locals who have entered the building for inspections or documentation speak carefully about the experience. Yet many admit the reactions they feel are stronger than expected, more physical than emotional. The shadow near the witness stand is not seen every time. Its appearances are unpredictable, making them more unsettling. Some visitors never see it at all, yet still feel watched. Others glimpse it without any sense of fear, only a deep, unsettling awareness that they are not alone. The building itself amplifies these sensations. Thick stone walls block outside noise, isolating the interior completely. Once inside, the modern world feels distant and unreal. The courthouse exists in a space apart, where time seems paused rather than past. Skeptics point to natural explanations. Old buildings can trap air, affecting breathing. Low light can create illusions. The mind responds strongly to environments associated with judgment and authority. These explanations are reasonable, yet they do not account for how consistently people describe the same sensations in the same places. What lingers most is the emotional tone of the space. The courthouse does not feel angry or violent. It feels stern. The pressure in the chest, the heavy air, the shadow at the witness stand all contribute to a single impression. This is a place where truth was demanded, where words carried weight, and where silence often followed decisions that could not be undone. When visitors finally step outside, the change is immediate. Air feels lighter. Breathing becomes easy again. Sounds return, birds, wind, distant traffic. The courthouse behind them looks still and empty, no different from any other abandoned building. Yet the memory remains. The sensation of standing in a room thick with unseen judgment. A brief glimpse of a shadow that felt purposeful rather than random. The overwhelming sense that the building remembers what happened within its walls. The abandoned Lafayette County Courthouse no longer holds trials, but it has not lost its presence. Carrying echoes not as sound, but as weight. For those who enter, the experience is rarely forgotten. A reminder that some places do not simply fade when their doors are closed. The old Hempstead County Courthouse stands with a solemn presence, its stone and brick shaped by decades of judgment, debate, and consequence. From the outside, it appears dignified and reserved, a structure built to command respect and authority. By day, sunlight rests calmly on its walls, and the building feels like a monument to order and law. Visitors walk past without pause, unaware of the tension that lingers inside. This courthouse is known for controversial verdicts that once divided opinions and shaped lives. Within these walls, arguments unfolded, decisions were weighed, and outcomes were delivered that could never be undone. Over time, the weight of those moments settled into the building itself, leaving behind an atmosphere that feels heavier than its appearance suggests. During business hours, the courthouse feels controlled and quiet. Old wooden benches and railings carry the marks of time, worn smooth by generations of hands. Even then, some visitors sense an undercurrent of unease, a feeling that the space is holding its breath. After sunset, the building changes. The surrounding streets fall quiet. And the courthouse is left alone with its memories. Lights from nearby buildings fade. And shadows gather along the edges of the structure. Inside, the air grows still. And the silence becomes deliberate. As if the building itself is listening. Late at night, voices are sometimes heard arguing within the courthouse. The sounds are muffled and distant, rising and falling behind closed doors. They resemble heated debates, layered voices speaking over one another with urgency. No single word can be clearly understood, yet the emotion is unmistakable. The arguments echo briefly through the halls, then fade into silence. Those who hear the voices often stop moving, afraid to interrupt. The sounds feel anchored to specific rooms, especially those once used for trials and deliberations. When staff or security investigate, they find empty chambers, chairs neatly arranged, and no sign of recent activity. The voices do not return once the lights are switched on. Another sound frequently reported is the soft shuffle of papers. Late at night, when the building should be completely still, the faint rustle of documents can be heard. The sound travels slowly, moving from one area to another. Sometimes it seems to come from record rooms where shelves hold decades of documents. Other times it drifts from courtrooms where verdicts were once read aloud. Those who follow the sound never find its source. Lights appearing in sealed rooms add to the Courthouses' reputation. Rooms that have been locked for years sometimes glow briefly in the middle of the night. The light is steady and contained, visible through narrow windows or beneath doors. Wiring is checked. Locks are tested. Nothing explains how the lights could turn on without access. By morning, the rooms are dark again, unchanged, as if the brief illumination never occurred. What unsettles visitors most is the consistency of these experiences. The voices, the papers, the lights all follow similar patterns regardless of who is present. People unfamiliar with the Courthouse's history describe the same sensations as those who know it well. The building does not react to belief or disbelief. It simply continues. The tension within the courthouse feels tied to its past. Many of the cases heard here involved deep disagreement, moral conflict, and lasting consequences. The arguments that once filled these rooms were never simple, and some were never truly resolved in the minds of those involved. Over time, that unresolved energy seems to have settled into the space. Walking through the courthouse alone at night can feel disorienting. Hallways appear longer, corners darker. Even familiar routes feel altered. Sounds carry strangely, and silence feels incomplete, as if waiting to be broken. Those who work late often leave lights on behind them, uneasy with the idea of darkness filling the space. Staff members speak of a sensation of being observed while reviewing records after hours. They describe the feeling of eyes on their backs, especially in older sections of the building. Turning around reveals nothing, yet the sensation lingers until they leave the area. Despite these reports, the courthouse remains a place of order and function. The activity within the building, whatever its cause, seems focused on repetition rather than disruption. Arguments replay. Pages turn. Lights reveal rooms briefly, then withdraw. This restraint is what makes the Old Jefferson County Courthouse so unsettling. Nothing here feels accidental. Each sound and movement appears deliberate, as if the building is revisiting its own history piece by piece. The courthouse does not forget. It remembers. By morning, the building returns to its daytime role. Staff arrive. Doors open. Papers are handled openly and intentionally. The strange activity of the night leaves no trace behind. Visitors move through the halls unaware of what occurred only hours earlier. Yet for those who have heard the voices or followed the sound of unseen pages, the memory remains vivid. They remember the intensity in the arguments, the careful movement of papers, the brief glow behind locked doors. These experiences linger in the mind, difficult to dismiss. The Old Jefferson County Courthouse stands as more than a historic building. It is a keeper of unresolved moments, a place where decisions once carried immense weight. When night falls and the world outside grows quiet, the courthouse seems to return to those moments, replaying fragments of its past in sound and light. Justice may have been delivered, but the echoes of judgment never fully left. The building holds them close, allowing them to surface only when no one is meant to be listening. The abandoned Lee County Courthouse stands apart from the rest of the town, its weathered exterior hinting at years of neglect and forgotten authority. Once a place of order and judgment, it now sits in silence, its windows dark and its doors rarely opened. Its windows dark and its doors rarely opened. Even from the outside, the building feels heavy, as if it carries something unresolved within its walls. Even from the outside, the building feels heavy, as if it carries something unresolved within its walls. As if it carries something unresolved within its walls. Inside, the air is stale and cool. Dust hangs in the stillness, and footsteps echo longer than they should through empty corridors. The upper floors feel quiet but tense, like a place holding its breath. Yet it is not the courtrooms or offices above that trouble visitors the most. It is what lies beneath. The holding cells below the courthouse are widely considered the most unsettling part of the building. A narrow stairway leads down into darkness, the temperature dropping with every step. The walls grow damp, and the smell of old stone and rust becomes stronger. Light from above fades quickly, replaced by deep shadows that cling to every corner. The silence feels dense, pressing in from all sides. Even the smallest movement carries. A single step can echo like several. Voices seem swallowed by the walls. The atmosphere feels oppressive, weighing heavily on the characters. Visitors exploring the lower level often report hearing sudden banging from inside the cells. The sound is sharp and forceful, like metal struck with intent. It comes without warning, echoing down the corridor before stopping abruptly. When people rush to investigate, the cells are always empty. The heavy doors remain closed, their surfaces cold to the touch. The banging never follows a pattern. Sometimes it sounds close. Other times it echoes from deeper within the cell block. The unpredictability keeps visitors on edge, listening closely even after the noise has stopped, waiting for it to return. Along with the banging, low groaning sounds are often reported rising through the floor. The noise is deep and strained, more felt than heard at times. It travels upward through the stone, vibrating faintly underfoot. The groans linger longer than the banging, fading slowly rather than stopping outright. Those who hear it often describe an immediate sense of discomfort. The sound carries an emotional weight that is difficult to explain. It does not feel mechanical or accidental. It feels expressive, as though something is trying to make itself known from below. The cells themselves are small and stark. Thick bars line the fronts, and the interiors are bare, marked by rust and age. Standing inside one of these spaces, even briefly, can feel overwhelming. The air feels trapped, reluctant to move. Some visitors report physical sensations while near the cells. Sudden chills pass through their bodies. Pressure builds behind the eyes. A sense of panic arrives without warning, urging them to leave immediately. These reactions often fade once they return to the upper floors, but the memory remains vivid. More troubling are the reports of unexplained scratches. Some visitors leave the courthouse to discover marks on their arms or backs that were not there before. They do not bleed heavily and do not resemble injuries from obvious contact with objects in the environment. Those affected often realize the marks only after leaving the building. They recall no moment of pain, no sharp sensation. The scratches simply appear, adding another layer of unease to an already disturbing experience. Staff and guides who have spent extended time in the courthouse speak quietly about these occurrences. They note that the activity seems concentrated in the holding area. The upper floors may feel tense, but the lower level feels active. It is as if something remains confined there, unable or unwilling to move on. The history of the courthouse offers some context. For decades, individuals passed through these cells during some of the most vulnerable moments of their lives. Fear, anger, and desperation filled the air. Some were held briefly. Others waited long hours or days, uncertain of their fate. Those emotions did not simply disappear when the building was abandoned. Many believe the structure absorbed those experiences. The stone and metal became witnesses, holding on to echoes of stress and suffering. Over time, those echoes may have taken on a presence of their own, replaying fragments of the past in sound and sensation. Visitors who descend into the holding area often report the same feeling. A sense of being watched. Not from a single direction, but from all around. The walls feel closer. The darkness feels intentional. Even with lights on, shadows seem thicker here. The urge to leave is common. People speak of an instinctive pull toward the stairs, a need to return to open space. Those who linger often regret it, carrying the unease with them long after they step back into daylight. Above ground, the courthouse feels different. The air is lighter. Sounds behave normally again. The building still feels heavy, but the oppressive pressure eases. It becomes easier to breathe, easier to think. Looking back at the structure from outside, it appears quiet and inert. No movement. No sound. Yet those who have been inside know that the silence is misleading. The abandoned Lee County Courthouse remains a place where history has not fully settled. The holding cells below continue to draw attention, not through spectacle, but through atmosphere. Groans that rise through stone. Marks that appear without explanation. It stands as a reminder that places designed to contain human suffering do not always release it when their purpose ends. Some buildings remember too much. And in the darkness beneath this courthouse, that memory still makes itself known, waiting in silence for the next set of footsteps to descend the stairs. The old Nevada County Courthouse stands with quiet authority at the edge of a town that has long since moved on. Its stone walls rise solid and unchanged, weathered by decades of heat, snow, and passing years. Even before entering, visitors often notice something unusual. The air around the building feels colder than the surrounding streets, as though the structure carries its own climate, untouched by the present. The courthouse was built to last, with thick walls and high ceilings meant to command respect. By day, sunlight struggles to warm its interior. Shadows cling to corners, and the chill lingers no matter the season. Each step inside feels heavier, as if the building resists intrusion, reminding visitors that this was once a place of judgment and consequence. Hallways stretch long and straight, lined with doors that once led to offices, chambers, and records of countless lives. Footsteps echo sharply against stone and tile, repeating longer than expected. Sound behaves differently here, bouncing and returning in ways that make it difficult to tell where movement begins or ends. A sense of unease settles in, the silence between footsteps growing thicker, more oppressive. Many who walk these halls report seeing a figure moving ahead of them, just at the edge of vision. The shape appears dressed in old judicial robes, dark and flowing, gliding rather than walking. The figure never turns fully, never reveals a face. It simply moves forward, disappearing around corners or through doorways that should be closed. Those who attempt to follow feel a growing unease. The distance between them and the figure never changes. No matter how quickly they walk, they cannot catch up. When they slow down, the figure slows as well, maintaining its silent lead through the courthouse. Footsteps often accompany this experience. Visitors hear them echoing behind them, steady and deliberate. The sound follows closely, matching pace, yet never arrives. Turning around reveals empty corridors stretching into shadow. The footsteps stop instantly when acknowledged, leaving silence that feels deliberate rather than accidental. This pattern repeats in different parts of the building. A presence ahead. Footsteps behind. Always moving. Never reaching. The sensation creates a strange disorientation, as though the visitor has stepped into a loop where progress is an illusion. What unsettles people most is not the sight or sound alone, but the feeling that settles in alongside them. A sense of being judged presses down quietly, growing stronger with each step. It is not fear in a sudden or violent way. It is weight, steady and inescapable. Visitors describe the feeling as standing before an unseen authority. Thoughts become self-conscious. Movements feel scrutinized. Even breathing seems too loud. The courthouse feels attentive, as if measuring intention rather than action. These chambers remain largely untouched, benches still facing forward, the judge's seat elevated above all else. The air here feels especially cold, sharp against the skin. Standing in these rooms, some report an overwhelming urge to remain silent. Those who linger describe a powerful emotional response. Guilt without cause. Anxiety without explanation. A strong desire to justify oneself, even though no one is asking questions. The space itself seems to demand accountability. Staff members and caretakers who have spent long hours inside the courthouse speak of similar sensations. They describe moments when the building feels alert, when silence becomes oppressive. Some avoid certain hallways altogether, choosing longer routes rather than passing through areas that feel too watchful. The footsteps are not always heard. Sometimes the feeling of being followed arrives without sound. In these moments, visitors report a tightening in the chest, a strong awareness of something just behind them. Turning brings no relief. The sensation remains until they leave the area. Despite these experiences, the courthouse never feels aggressive. There are no sudden noises meant to startle, no visible threats. Instead, everything unfolds slowly, deliberately, as though the building operates on its own measured sense of time. For generations, it was a place where decisions were made that altered lives forever. Arguments were heard. Sentences were passed. Emotions ran high, then were sealed into record in stone. The walls absorbed it all. It is easy to imagine how such a place could retain a sense of judgment. The structure was designed to command order and authority. Even abandoned, it seems unwilling to release that role. As daylight fades, the courthouse grows colder still. Shadows lengthen across floors, and doorways darken into solid shapes. The figure may appear again, gliding silently through the halls. Some visitors leave quickly, unable to tolerate the pressure. Others stay, compelled to understand what they are feeling. A few describe standing alone in the main hall, overwhelmed by the sensation of being evaluated, as if their presence alone requires explanation. Eventually, most choose to leave. Stepping outside brings immediate relief. The air feels warmer. Sound returns to normal. The weight lifts, though not completely. Looking back, the courthouse appears unchanged, quiet and still. Yet the feeling does not fade easily. Those who have walked its halls carry the memory with them. The image of a robed figure moving just ahead. The sound of footsteps that never arrive. The unmistakable sense of being judged without words. And for those who enter its halls, the experience leaves a lasting impression. Not of fear alone, but of presence. A reminder that judgment, once given a home, may linger long after the final verdict was delivered. The abandoned Jackson County Courthouse rises quietly at the edge of town, its weathered stone and boarded windows standing as reminders of a different era. There was a time when this building pulsed with life. Court sessions filled the halls with voices, arguments, and hurried movement. Lawyers crossed corridors with purpose. Spectators whispered from wooden benches. Decisions were made here that shaped lives and futures, sometimes in moments, sometimes after long deliberation. The courthouse was a place of authority, tension, and resolution. Now, it is empty. The air inside feels stale and unmoving, as if sealed away from the present. Sunlight slips through broken windows in narrow beams, illuminating floating dust that drifts without urgency. Every sound made within the building feels amplified, bouncing off bare walls and high ceilings before fading slowly. At night, the courthouse changes. Darkness settles into the rooms and hallways, filling spaces where light once brought clarity. The silence deepens, no longer just the absence of sound, but something that presses inward. It is during these hours that people report hearing it. A sharp crack cuts through the stillness, unmistakable in its clarity. The sound of a gavel striking echoes through the building, loud and decisive. It does not resemble falling debris or shifting wood. It carries intent, as though a session has been called to order once more. The sound comes again. Each strike reverberates through the empty chambers, bouncing off walls and staircases. The echo lingers longer than it should, repeating itself softly before fading. Investigations reveal nothing disturbed. The old courtroom remains empty, its furniture broken or removed long ago. Yet the sound is clear enough that listeners often freeze, convinced they are not alone. The gavel does not strike endlessly. It comes in brief sequences, several sharp blows, then stops abruptly. When it ends, the silence that follows feels heavier than before. The absence of sound becomes almost physical, filling the space where the echo once lived. People standing inside the courthouse after hearing the gavel often describe a strange sensation. Breathing feels louder. Movement feels intrusive. Even small shifts of weight seem to disrupt the stillness in uncomfortable ways. It is as though the building is waiting, holding the moment open longer than it should. The courthouse remembers its role. For decades, it served as a place where order was enforced and judgments were delivered. The gavel symbolized authority, finality, and consequence. Each strike marked the end of argument and the beginning of outcome. Some believe that repetition left an imprint too strong to fade when the building was abandoned. Walls that once heard countless verdicts now stand silent. The gavel sound is not accompanied by voices or footsteps. It stands alone, isolated, as if repeating the most defining moment of the building's existence. Those who hear it often feel an emotional weight afterward. Not fear exactly, but gravity. The sense that something important has just occurred, even if it cannot be understood. The sound does not feel random. Like a ritual performed long after the participants have gone. The silence that follows is unsettling. More complete, as if the building has withdrawn into itself. By the space itself. Attentive to anyone who lingers after the echo fades. Night after night, the stories repeat. Different visitors. Different times. Same sound. A sound. An echo that fills the halls. A silence that settles heavier than before. The building offers no explanation. There are no mechanical systems left to create such noise. No loose objects capable of producing such a precise sound. The courthouse stands stripped of function, yet it continues to perform one action that defined it most. By morning, the experience feels distant. Daylight softens the building's presence. The silence becomes ordinary again. Dust drifts lazily. The courthouse appears simply abandoned, another relic of the past slowly fading away. Yet those who heard the gavel remember it clearly. The sharpness of the strike. The way it echoed. The feeling that followed. These memories linger longer than expected, returning unexpectedly in quiet moments. The abandoned Jackson County Courthouse does not demand belief. It does not display dramatic movement or visible figures. It offers only sound, brief and unmistakable. Followed by an oppressive stillness that feels intentional. As night falls and darkness fills the empty chambers once more. The air grows heavy. The silence deepens. And somewhere within the decaying walls, a gavel may strike again. Calling order to a courtroom that no longer exists. Echoing through the past, and leaving behind a silence that feels more powerful than sound. The Old Jefferson County Courthouse stands as a reminder of a harsher chapter in local history, a building shaped by conflict, judgment, and survival. Its exterior appears solid and restrained, weathered by time but still imposing. From the outside, it gives little indication of the intensity that once filled its halls. Yet many who approach it feel uneasy before they even cross the threshold. This courthouse witnessed trials during violent times, when law and order struggled to keep pace with unrest. Decisions made here carried immediate consequences, often under great pressure. The walls absorbed raised voices, urgent arguments, and moments of silence that followed verdicts no one could undo. Though the courtrooms now sit empty, the building seems unwilling to let go of what it once held. Stepping inside, visitors often report an immediate emotional reaction. A sudden wave of fear rises without warning, sharp and overwhelming. The sensation does not build slowly. It strikes at once, tightening the chest and quickening the pulse. Some people turn back within moments, unable to explain why they feel compelled to leave. Those who remain notice how sound behaves differently inside. Footsteps echo longer than expected, bouncing off stone and wood. Even small movements feel amplified, as though the building is listening. The air feels cool and dense, carrying a weight that presses inward rather than lifting. The basement is where many of the most disturbing reports originate. Stairs descend into darkness, and light grows thin with each step downward. The space below is unfinished and narrow, its walls rough and uninviting. Visitors describe a sense of dread that intensifies the farther they go, as if something below resents being approached. From this basement, screaming is sometimes heard. The sound is distant but unmistakable, rising suddenly and cutting through the silence. It carries pain and urgency, echoing through the lower levels before fading away. The screaming does not repeat on command. It appears without warning, then disappears as if absorbed by the walls. Those who hear it often freeze in place, unsure whether to run or listen. Some describe the sound as coming from behind the walls rather than from a single room. Others believe it rises from deeper underground, traveling upward through the structure. No source is ever found, and no recording equipment has captured it clearly. Locked rooms throughout the courthouse add to the unease. Heavy doors remain sealed, their contents unknown. Near these rooms, visitors sometimes hear the sound of chains rattling. The noise is metallic and sharp, moving slightly, as though disturbed by unseen hands. It lasts only a few seconds, then stops completely. The chains are never found loose or out of place. Doors remain locked. Windows are sealed. The sound leaves no physical evidence behind. Yet those who hear it describe a chilling certainty that the noise was real, not imagined. In some cases, the rattling is accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature. Cold air brushes past exposed skin, raising goosebumps and making breath feel shallow. The sensation fades quickly once people move away from the area, reinforcing the idea that the experience is tied to specific locations within the building. The courtroom itself carries a different kind of tension. Entering the space often triggers a renewed sense of fear, sharper and more focused. Visitors describe the feeling of being judged, not by sight, but by presence. Standing still becomes uncomfortable, as though remaining silent is expected, yet speaking feels forbidden. Others feel an invisible pressure pushing them toward the exits. These reactions are immediate and physical, not gradual or subtle. The body seems to respond before the mind can reason. Staff members and locals familiar with the courthouse acknowledge its reputation. They speak carefully, avoiding exaggeration. Many admit they feel uneasy inside, even during routine visits. Some refuse to enter certain areas alone, especially the basement and locked sections. Skeptics point to logical explanations. Old buildings produce strange sounds as materials shift. Air pressure changes can cause noises in sealed spaces. Fear can be contagious, influenced by expectation and history. These explanations are reasonable, yet they do not fully account for the intensity of reactions reported by first-time visitors with no prior knowledge of the stories. What makes the Old Jefferson County Courthouse stand out is the consistency of experiences. Different people describe the same sensations. The same fear upon entry. The same screaming from below. The same rattling chains near locked rooms. These reports span years, shared by people with no connection to one another. The building itself feels resistant to comfort. Light does not soften its corners. Silence does not bring peace. Instead, the absence of sound seems to amplify tension, making every creak and echo feel significant. Making every creak and echo feel significant. Leaving the courthouse brings immediate relief. Air feels lighter. Breathing steadies. The sense of fear dissolves almost instantly, replaced by confusion and lingering unease. Looking back at the building, it appears unchanged, silent and unmoving, giving no indication of what was just experienced inside. Yet the memory stays. Those who enter the Old Jefferson County Courthouse rarely forget it. The fear felt at the doorway. The screams that rise from the basement. The chains that rattle where no one stands. These moments remain vivid, resurfacing long after the visit ends. The courthouse no longer hosts trials, but its past has not faded quietly. It stands as a structure shaped by conflict, carrying echoes not as sound alone, but as emotion. For those who step inside, the experience feels less like visiting an abandoned building and more like crossing into a space where history still presses forward, demanding to be felt. The abandoned Pike County Courthouse sits quietly at the edge of a small town, its presence easy to miss yet impossible to ignore once noticed. Its presence easy to miss yet impossible to ignore once noticed. The building is set back from the road, partially hidden by overgrown trees and long grass that has slowly reclaimed the grounds. From a distance, it appears still and empty, a relic of another era left behind by progress. Up close, however, the structure carries a weight that feels alert, as if the building is aware of every step taken near it. During the day, the courthouse looks tired rather than threatening. Sunlight filters through broken windows and cracked stone, revealing peeling paint and worn floors. The halls are silent, filled only with the distant sounds of the town beyond its walls. Even then, visitors often describe a sense of unease, a feeling that the building is not as abandoned as it seems. The mirrors inside the courthouse draw attention almost immediately. Many are cracked or clouded with age, their surfaces fractured into uneven patterns. When people pass by them, they sometimes notice faces reflected where none should be. These faces are faint and incomplete, appearing briefly within the cracks before fading away. They do not resemble clear reflections, but impressions, as if memories are pressing through the glass. These faces are impressions, as if memories are pressing through the glass. Those who stop to look more closely often feel unsettled. The faces do not move independently. They seem to watch, expressions unreadable. Turning away and looking back usually reveals nothing but the damaged mirror once again. Yet the image lingers in the mind, vivid and difficult to dismiss. Doors within the courthouse have a habit of opening on their own. Heavy wooden doors, swollen with age, creak slowly as they swing inward without warning. The sound carries through the empty halls, echoing longer than expected. There is no rush to the movement. Each door opens at a deliberate pace, as if guided by careful hands. Each door opens at a deliberate pace, as if guided by careful hands. Visitors often freeze when this happens, listening closely. The door completes its motion and comes to rest, revealing nothing beyond the darkened room it guards. When checked later, the door may be found closed again, positioned exactly as it was before. The repetition of this behavior leaves many uneasy, unsure whether the building is settling or responding. As sunset approaches, the atmosphere inside the courthouse changes noticeably. Light drains from the halls, and shadows deepen along the walls and staircases. The air feels heavier, thicker, as though it presses down on those inside. Breathing becomes more deliberate, and even small sounds feel amplified. After dark, the courthouse feels watchful. Every hallway seems longer, every corner more uncertain. The silence is no longer empty but filled with expectation. People who explore the building at night often describe the sensation of being followed, even when no footsteps can be heard behind them. The oppressive feeling intensifies as the hours pass. Rooms that felt merely abandoned during the day now feel occupied by something unseen. The temperature drops unevenly, leaving pockets of cold air that cling to doorways and stairwells. Moving through these areas can cause a sudden chill, accompanied by a wave of discomfort that urges retreat. Some report hearing faint sounds that do not belong to an empty building. Soft movements. A quiet breath. The subtle scrape of something shifting just out of sight. These sounds never grow loud enough to identify, yet they persist long enough to unsettle those listening. The courthouse once held moments of great tension. Arguments, verdicts, and decisions that altered lives unfolded within these rooms. Emotions ran high, and outcomes were not always accepted peacefully. Over time, the weight of those moments seems to have settled into the walls, leaving behind an atmosphere shaped by unresolved energy. Walking through the old courtrooms after dark can feel especially intense. The raised platforms, empty benches, and wide floors create a sense of exposure. Some visitors feel compelled to speak quietly, as if sound might draw unwanted attention. Others feel an urge to leave immediately, unable to shake the feeling that they are intruding. The cracked mirrors and opening doors appear to be part of a larger pattern. The building seems to respond to presence, acknowledging those who enter without ever revealing itself fully. Faces appear only briefly. Doors move without explanation. The courthouse offers glimpses, never answers. Those who leave after nightfall often do so in silence. Conversations fade, replaced by thoughtful glances and quickened steps. The experience is difficult to describe, not because it is overwhelming, but because it feels personal. Each visitor senses something slightly different, yet all agree on the same core feeling of pressure and awareness. By morning, the courthouse returns to its daytime stillness. Sunlight softens the shadows, and the oppressive weight lifts. The mirrors reflect only empty halls once more. Doors remain closed and unmoving. It becomes easy to question what was felt after sunset, to wonder whether imagination filled the gaps left by darkness. Those who have been inside at night remember clearly. They recall the faces in the mirrors, the slow creak of opening doors, and the heavy air that seemed to settle over everything. These memories linger, resurfacing unexpectedly long after leaving the building behind. The abandoned Pike County Courthouse remains hidden in its quiet town, overlooked by many yet deeply felt by those who step inside. It does not call attention to itself or demand belief. It simply waits, holding on to the echoes of its past. When the sun goes down and the town grows quiet, the courthouse seems to wake. The mirrors remember. The doors respond. The atmosphere tightens, pressing inward until those inside feel compelled to leave. And when they do, the building returns to silence, watchful and patient, keeping its stories locked within cracked glass and empty halls. The old Drew County Courthouse stands quietly at the heart of its town, its aged stone and worn steps reflecting decades of use and memory. Built to serve justice and order, the building now feels distant from its original purpose. Even from the outside, there is a sense of heaviness, a quiet sadness that settles in before a single door is opened. Inside, the courthouse feels colder than expected. The air is still, and sound seems to move reluctantly through the halls. Footsteps echo softly, stretching longer than they should, as if the building itself is listening. Light filters through tall windows, but it never fully warms the space. Visitors often lower their voices instinctively, guided by an unspoken awareness that this place carries something solemn. The sadness becomes more apparent as one moves deeper into the structure. Long corridors lead past empty offices and silent courtrooms. Dust rests undisturbed on benches where countless people once sat, waiting for decisions that would change their lives. The walls feel close here, holding an emotion rather than releasing it. Near the judge's chambers, visitors often pause without knowing why. The air grows noticeably cooler, and a soft sound sometimes drifts through the space. It is quiet and fragile, like muffled crying carried on a slow breath. The sound does not echo loudly. It lingers close to the walls, rising and falling gently before fading away. Those who hear it often stop and listen, unsure whether the sound is real or imagined. The crying never becomes clear enough to identify words or direction. It simply exists, suspended in the space, then disappears. When people investigate, the chambers are always empty, the doors closed, the silence complete. Cold drafts move through the courthouse in unexpected ways. Even sealed corridors experience sudden shifts in temperature. A chill will sweep through without warning, brushing past like unseen movement. The sensation is brief but intense, leaving goosebumps in its wake. These drafts do not follow patterns of weather or ventilation. They appear selectively, often in the same areas where the crying is reported. The building feels active in a restrained, sorrowful way. There are no loud disturbances, no violent sounds. Everything here is subdued, muted, as though the courthouse itself is burdened by what it remembers. The sadness does not rush at visitors. It settles slowly, pressing down with quiet persistence. Staff and guides familiar with the courthouse acknowledge the emotional impact it has on people. They note that many visitors leave feeling unusually tired. The exhaustion is not physical alone. It feels deeper, as though energy has been quietly drawn away during their time inside. Some describe heavy limbs. Others mention foggy thoughts or an overwhelming urge to sit down and rest. The feeling often intensifies near the judge's chambers and adjacent corridors. Standing in these areas for too long can feel draining. Breathing becomes more noticeable. Movements feel slower. The body reacts as if carrying weight that was not there before. The courthouse has witnessed countless moments of loss and consequence. Decisions made within these walls altered lives forever. Families were separated. While the proceedings have long since ended, many believe the emotional residue remains. The crying heard near the chambers is often interpreted as an echo of grief rather than a presence. It does not feel like a single voice. It feels collective, a blending of sorrow carried forward through time. The sound arrives softly, as if not wanting to disturb, yet unable to remain silent. Visitors who return multiple times often report similar experiences. The cold drafts appear in familiar places. The sadness settles in predictably. The sense of fatigue follows them out the door and lingers for hours afterward. Even those skeptical of unexplained phenomena admit the courthouse feels different from other historic buildings. As evening approaches, the atmosphere deepens. Shadows stretch along the corridors. The air grows denser. The crying is reported more often at this time, drifting faintly through the quiet. The building feels less like an empty structure and more like a container, holding emotions that never found release. Despite this, the courthouse does not feel hostile. There is no sense of threat or danger. Morning light brings some relief. Sunlight filters more fully through the windows. And the cold drafts become less frequent. The crying ceases. The building feels calmer, though the underlying heaviness never completely fades. Visitors leaving the Old Jefferson County Courthouse often pause outside, taking deeper breaths as if emerging from underwater. The exhaustion begins to lift slowly. Thoughts clear. Yet many carry the emotional weight with them, unsure how to explain what they felt inside. The courthouse remains standing, quiet and dignified, no longer serving its original role. But its purpose as a witness endures. The walls remember voices that trembled, decisions that carried sorrow, and moments of irreversible change. In its sealed corridors and silent chambers, the Old Jefferson County Courthouse holds on to that history. The soft crying, the cold drafts, the drained feeling left behind are not spectacles. They are impressions. Subtle reminders that some places absorb the emotions lived within them. And for those who walk its halls, the sadness does not announce itself loudly. It settles gently, like a memory not fully forgotten, asking only to be felt before fading back into the quiet stone that holds it. The abandoned Washington County Courthouse stands in quiet neglect, its once commanding presence softened by time and decay. Weathered stone and fading brick mark a building that once held authority over the lives of many. The grounds are still, and the air around the structure feels heavy, as if the past has settled into the walls and refuses to leave. What was once a center of power is now a hollow shell, watching silently as years pass by. Entering the courthouse feels like crossing a threshold into another era. The doors open into wide halls where footsteps once echoed with purpose. Dust coats the floors, and fragments of old signage cling to walls. Light filters through tall windows, casting pale shapes across the interior. Even during the day, the building feels dim, as though it resists illumination. The silence inside is deceptive. Visitors often report hearing voices long before seeing anything unusual. The sounds resemble arguments, tense and overlapping, rising from empty rooms and distant corridors. They feel close enough to follow, drawing listeners deeper into the courthouse. When people move toward the sound, it recedes, echoing down other hallways, never allowing itself to be located. The experience leaves listeners caught between curiosity and discomfort. Footsteps often follow. They rush suddenly down hallways, quick and purposeful, as though someone is hurrying to reach a critical moment. The sound grows louder for a brief instant, then disappears entirely. Turning corners reveals nothing but empty corridors stretching into shadow. These rushing steps feel different from the natural sounds of an old building. They carry intention. The rhythm suggests urgency rather than decay. Visitors describe standing still, listening, convinced someone is approaching, only to be met with silence that feels too complete. The courtrooms themselves are. Benches remain in place, facing a judge's stand that towers above the room. The air here feels particularly dense, pressing down on anyone who enters. Some claim that within these rooms, the sound of a verdict being read can be heard. The voice is firm and measured, carrying authority and finality. Though the words cannot be clearly identified, the cadence is unmistakable. It is the sound of decision, of judgment delivered without appeal. The benches remain empty, the judge's seat unoccupied. The effect of hearing this voice is powerful. Visitors describe an overwhelming sense of tension, as though they have intruded upon something unfinished. The room feels charged with expectation, as if waiting for a response that will never come. Sound travels in unpredictable ways, bouncing off stone and wood, distorting direction and distance. A whisper heard at one end may seem to come from another. Footsteps echo longer than expected, then stop abruptly. People who explore the building often report feeling watched. It is not tied to a single location, but follows them as they move. The sensation grows stronger near stairwells and doorways, places where movement once mattered most. The building feels alert, as though aware of every step taken inside. Some visitors attempt to document their experience, recording audio or video. Playback often reveals nothing unusual, despite what was heard in the moment. The arguments, footsteps, and verdict voice leave no trace, existing only in the instant they are experienced. Caretakers and local officials familiar with the courthouse speak cautiously about these reports. They acknowledge that the building has a presence, something that affects people differently. Some avoid entering alone. Others limit their time inside, citing discomfort they cannot explain. The history of the courthouse adds to its atmosphere. For decades, it was a place where disputes were aired publicly and outcomes decided definitively. Emotions ran high within these walls. Lives change direction in these rooms, sometimes forever. The structure absorbed every raised voice, every hurried step, every final judgment. It is easy to imagine how such energy might linger. The courthouse was designed to amplify authority and order. Even in abandonment, it seems to continue that role, replaying fragments of its former function in sound and sensation. As daylight fades, the building grows colder. Shadows lengthen, and the silence deepens between unexplained sounds. Arguments may rise again from unseen spaces. Footsteps may rush past with no source. The verdict voice may echo once more, measured and final. Those who remain inside after dark often leave quickly. The experience becomes too intense, too personal. Stepping outside brings relief, as though pressure has been released. The night air feels lighter, the sounds of the world returning to normal. Looking back, the courthouse appears still and empty. There is no sign of movement, no hint of voices. Yet the memory lingers, vivid and unsettling. The sense of having witnessed something incomplete does not fade easily. The abandoned Washington County Courthouse continues to stand, weathered and forgotten by most. It does not seek attention, nor does it offer answers. It simply exists, holding echoes of arguments never resolved, footsteps that never arrive, and verdicts that still resonate within its walls. For those who step inside, the experience is more than a visit to a forgotten building. It is an encounter with a place that remembers its power, a structure that still speaks in fragments. Reminding visitors that authority and judgment, once given form, can linger long after the halls fall silent. The old Logan County Courthouse stands with quiet permanence, its stone exterior shaped by years of weather and watchful silence. By day, the building appears orderly and restrained, a place rooted in civic purpose and long routines. Sunlight spills across the steps and windows, softening the edges of a structure that once anchored the daily life of the town. Inside, the halls stretch long and straight. The floors carry the marks of countless footsteps, worn smooth by repetition. As the day fades, the atmosphere begins to shift. Light retreats from the hallways, leaving pockets of shadow where corners deepen and distances seem to lengthen. Sounds carry farther, then vanish abruptly. A single footstep echoes longer than expected, returning from places unseen. It is in this changing light that the courthouse reveals what it is known for. Shadow sightings are the most common reports. Figures appear at the ends of hallways, standing where the light thins and the walls narrow. They are not fully formed, more suggestion than shape, outlined by contrast rather than detail. At a glance, they resemble people waiting, still and patient, positioned just beyond comfortable distance. Those who notice the figures often hesitate. The instinct is to call out, to assume someone else is present. But something about the stillness holds them in place. The shadows do not move toward the observer. They remain fixed, as if anchored to the space itself. When approached, they vanish instantly. There is no movement away, no retreating steps. The figures dissolve as soon as distance closes, leaving behind an empty stretch of hallway and a lingering sense of interruption. The space where they stood feels briefly altered, colder and quieter than the surrounding area. This pattern repeats across different floors. People report seeing figures near stairwells, outside former offices, and at the far ends of corridors that lead nowhere in particular. The sightings are brief but consistent, always appearing just long enough to be noticed, never long enough to be confirmed. The courthouse does not feel empty, even when it clearly is. The sense of being watched never fades. It is not tied to a single direction or location. The awareness seems to come from the building itself. A steady attention that follows movement without shifting position. Visitors describe the feeling as quiet but persistent, like standing within someone else's focus. History lingers heavily here. The old Logan County Courthouse once hosted countless proceedings during periods of uncertainty and change. Decisions made within its walls carried weight and consequence, shaping lives in lasting ways. Emotions ran high in these rooms, and the outcomes were not always clear or comforting. Over time, the building absorbed these moments. The long waits, the tense silences, the anticipation at the ends of hallways where people once stood expecting news. It is in these same spaces that the shadow figures now appear, positioned where waiting once took place. The shadows never show faces. There are no features to identify, no expressions to interpret. They remain outlines only, defined by absence rather than presence. This lack of detail makes them harder to dismiss, as the mind struggles to fill in what the eyes cannot see clearly. Some visitors try to test the experience. They walk the hallways repeatedly, turning corners slowly, watching reflections in glass and polished surfaces. The figures do not appear on command. They arrive unexpectedly, often when attention drifts or movement slows. Their timing feels deliberate, as if the building chooses when to reveal them. The sense of observation grows stronger after dark. The building seems to narrow, guiding movement along predetermined paths. In these moments, the awareness of being watched becomes almost physical, pressing gently against the senses. Those who linger often report heightened alertness. Every sound feels significant. Every shift in shadow draws attention. The courthouse does not create panic, but it does not allow full relaxation either. The feeling is one of measured tension, as if something expects acknowledgement without explanation. Despite the sightings, there is no sign of aggression. The figures do not chase or confront. They do not gesture or speak. They appear, observe, and vanish, leaving the observer alone with the aftermath. The experience feels less like an encounter and more like a reminder. Staff and caretakers speak quietly about the building. They mention moments when the courthouse feels especially aware, times when movement seems noticed even in empty rooms. Some avoid certain hallways after sunset, choosing longer routes rather than passing places where figures are commonly seen. Morning light changes the mood. Sunlight returns warmth to the stone and clarity to the corridors. Shadows behave normally again, and the sense of observation softens enough to ignore. The courthouse resumes its appearance as a historic structure, silent and still. Yet those who experienced the shadows remember them clearly. The instant vanishing. The lingering awareness. The sense that something remains present even when unseen. These impressions do not fade easily, returning unexpectedly when walking other long hallways or standing alone in quiet spaces. The old Logan County Courthouse continues to stand, preserved by time and memory. It does not explain its shadows or offer answers. It simply holds its history in place, allowing fragments to surface when conditions align. The figures appear at the ends of hallways, waiting where others once waited. Then disappearing before questions can be asked. As evening settles and the building grows quiet once more, the halls lengthen and shadows gather. Figures may form again at a distance. Just long enough to be noticed. And within the old Logan County Courthouse, the sense of being watched remains, steady and unbroken, a presence that does not leave, even when no one else is there. The abandoned Perry County Courthouse sits far from busy roads, surrounded by quiet land that feels unchanged by time. Its small size makes it easy to overlook, yet those who find it rarely forget the experience. The building stands alone, its exterior plain and unassuming, offering no warning of the atmosphere waiting inside. Approaching the courthouse, the silence becomes noticeable. Wind moves through nearby trees, but the sound feels distant, muted. The structure seems to absorb noise rather than reflect it. Even before stepping inside, some visitors describe a sense of hesitation, an instinctive pause as if crossing the threshold requires more effort than expected. Inside, the courthouse feels tighter than its exterior suggests. Narrow hallways stretch forward, their walls marked by age and neglect. Dust hangs in the air, undisturbed. Footsteps echo sharply, then fade too quickly, leaving behind an uncomfortable stillness. The building feels empty, yet not vacant. The walls themselves seem active. Visitors often report hearing knocking sounds coming from within them, not from doors or windows. The sound is soft but deliberate, a steady tap that repeats once or twice before stopping. It does not resemble loose wood or settling beams. It sounds intentional, as though someone on the other side is testing the surface. These knockings occur in different parts of the building, sometimes close, sometimes farther away. Trying to locate the source only makes the sound harder to track. When visitors place a hand against the wall, the knocking does not respond. It simply fades, leaving behind a sense of expectation that something else might follow. The courtroom is the heart of the courthouse, and it carries a heavier atmosphere than the rest of the building. Light enters through tall windows, but it does little to soften the space. The air feels still, almost stagnant, as if circulation stopped long ago. Voices, even whispers, seem to linger longer than they should. Near the jury box, the temperature drops noticeably. Cold air settles around the benches, wrapping the area in an unexpected chill. Visitors step closer and feel it immediately, a sharp contrast to the rest of the room. The cold does not spread outward. It remains contained, focused, as though anchored to that specific spot. Standing near the jury box can trigger a sudden physical reaction. Some describe shallow breathing, others a tightening in the chest. The body reacts before the mind can process what is happening. Stepping away brings almost instant relief, reinforcing the sense that the cold air is not random. The jury box itself appears ordinary, worn by years of use. Yet many feel compelled to avoid it, as if the space demands distance. Sitting there is uncomfortable, even for a brief moment. The silence grows heavier, pressing inward, amplifying every thought. Throughout the courthouse, some visitors experience sudden panic without any clear cause. The sensation arrives abruptly, heart racing, muscles tense, an overwhelming urge to leave immediately. There is no visible threat, no loud noise or sudden movement to explain it. The fear fades quickly once outside, replaced by confusion and lingering unease. Looking back at the courthouse, it appears unchanged, quiet and still, offering no hint of what was just felt inside. The isolation of the building adds to its impact. With no nearby structures and little outside noise, the courthouse exists in its own pocket of quiet. Time seems to slow inside, moments stretching longer than expected. The absence of modern distractions makes every sensation more intense. Locals familiar with the courthouse speak about it cautiously. Stories are shared quietly, often with reluctance. Many acknowledge the strange atmosphere without trying to define it. Some refuse to enter alone. Others avoid the building entirely, choosing to keep their distance. Skeptics suggest reasonable explanations. Old buildings trap cold air. Walls can carry sound in unusual ways. Anxiety can surface unexpectedly in unfamiliar environments. These explanations offer comfort, yet they do not fully account for the consistency of reports. Visitors with no prior knowledge describe the same experiences. The knocking in the walls. The cold near the jury box. The sudden panic. These similarities appear again and again, shared by people who arrived without expectations. The courthouse feels shaped by its past. Decisions once made here affected lives, sometimes under pressure and fear. The building seems to hold on to that tension, releasing it as sensation rather than memory. The air feels charged, as though judgment never fully left the room. Walking through the hallways, some feel watched, not by eyes, but by presence. The sensation is subtle yet persistent. It does not follow movement. It simply exists, filling the space between walls and doorways. When visitors finally leave, the change is immediate. Air feels lighter. Sounds return. The panic dissolves. Yet the experience does not fade as easily. The abandoned Perry County Courthouse may be small and isolated, but its impact is profound. Instead, it unsettles through silence, sensation, and the feeling that the building remembers what happened within its walls. For those who step inside, the experience feels personal, as though the courthouse responds differently to each visitor while revealing the same underlying tension. The old stone county courthouse rises from the center of town like a monument carved from time itself. Built of thick stone blocks darkened by age, the structure seems older than the streets around it. As though it has always been there, watching generations pass. Its walls hold shadow even in daylight. And the narrow windows offer little reflection, giving the building a reserved and solemn presence. During the day, the courthouse feels quiet and heavy. Sunlight touches the stone but does not warm it. The air inside is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of dust and old paper. Footsteps echo sharply against the floors, bouncing off high ceilings and disappearing down long corridors. Even then, visitors often lower their voices without realizing why, as if the building demands restraint. The staircase is the first feature most people notice. Wide and worn at the center, each step shows the passage of countless feet over the years. The railing is smooth, polished by hands long gone. Looking upward, the stairs vanish into shadow, turning slightly as they climb, hiding what lies above. As evening approaches, the courthouse changes. The stone walls seem to darken, absorbing the fading light. Shadows stretch across the halls and settle into corners that feel deeper than they should. The building grows quieter, but not empty. The silence feels occupied, as if something unseen has taken its place. After sunset, slow footsteps are often heard climbing the stairs. The sound is steady and deliberate, one step at a time, never rushed. Each footfall lands with weight, echoing through the stone interior. Those who hear it instinctively look toward the staircase, expecting to see someone ascending. The footsteps continue upward, reaching the upper level, then stopping. There is no sound of doors opening or closing. No voices follow. Just the end of movement, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than before. Moments later, heavy breathing may echo through the empty rooms. The sound is deep and rhythmic, unmistakably human, as if someone is standing just out of sight, catching their breath after the climb. It fills the space briefly, then fades away, replaced by stillness. People who investigate move cautiously, calling out as they climb the stairs. Their voices sound small against the stone. Reaching the upper floor, they find nothing. Hallways are empty. Doors stand open or closed as they should. There is no sign of anyone having been there at all. The upper level feels colder than the rest of the building. The air seems to settle there, unmoving and dense. Some describe a pressure in their chest, mild but persistent, urging them to leave. Others feel watched, as though the empty rooms are aware of their presence. Despite repeated experiences, no one is ever found upstairs. Security checks reveal no trespassers. Cameras, when present, show only empty corridors. The sounds never coincide with visible movement. They exist on their own, detached from explanation. The courthouse has witnessed countless moments of tension over its long history. Trials unfolded here, decisions were delivered, and lives were changed within these walls. When the day ended, the stone absorbed it all. Over time, those moments seem to have left an imprint. The slow footsteps echo the measured pace of someone climbing toward judgment or resolution. The heavy breathing suggests effort, strain, or anticipation, emotions once common within these walls. The building feels as though it is replaying fragments of its past. Walking alone through the courthouse at night can be disorienting. Hallways appear longer, and sound travels unpredictably. A noise from below can seem close, while a sound nearby feels distant. The stone reflects everything, amplifying uncertainty. Some visitors report that the footsteps always sound the same. The lack of visual confirmation makes the experience more unsettling. There is nothing to confront, nothing to challenge. Only sound and absence. The courthouse offers no answers, only repetition. Only sound and absence. There is no variation, no sign of change. It is as if the moment is fixed, repeating itself endlessly. Those who work late often avoid the upper floor altogether. They finish tasks quickly, keeping lights on behind them, unwilling to linger near the staircase. Even seasoned staff admit that the building feels different after dark, more attentive, more aware. By morning, the courthouse returns to its daytime stillness. Sunlight creeps back across the stone floors. The staircase stands quiet and ordinary once more. There is no trace of the footsteps, no sign of breath in the air. The building appears unchanged, dignified and unmoving. Visitors arriving during the day sense none of the night's tension. The stone looks solid and reliable. The rooms feel formal and calm. It becomes easy to doubt the stories, to attribute them to imagination or fatigue. Yet those who have heard the footsteps or the breathing remember clearly. The sounds do not fade with time. They remain sharp in memory, resurfacing whenever the courthouse is mentioned. The Old Stone County Courthouse continues to stand, built of stone and shadow, holding its history tightly within its walls. It does not announce its presence or seek attention. It simply waits. When night falls and the building is left alone, the stairs echo once more. Slow footsteps climb upward, heavy breathing fills empty rooms. And when someone goes looking, they find nothing at all, only stone silence and the enduring feeling that the courthouse is never truly empty. The abandoned Washington County Courthouse stands near the path of old river routes, where water once carried people, goods, and stories through the region. From the outside, the building appears worn and forgotten, its structure shaped by time and neglect. The surrounding land feels quiet, but not peaceful. There is a sense that the courthouse was never meant to be left behind, as though it still expects activity that will never return. Stepping inside, the air feels cool and damp despite the absence of flowing water. Dust hangs in the stillness, and the smell of old stone and wood lingers. Light filters weakly through tall windows, casting long shadows across empty hallways. Every sound feels amplified here. A single footstep echoes as if the building is repeating it back. The courthouse once served as a center of authority and judgment, closely tied to the river routes nearby. Those waterways brought constant movement, and with it, conflict, desperation, and consequence. The building feels shaped by that history. Even now, it carries a tension that does not fade with silence. Visitors often notice the sound of dripping water soon after entering. The noise is slow and steady, echoing softly through the halls. It sounds as though water is falling from pipes hidden within the walls. Yet inspections reveal the pipes are completely dry. There is no moisture, no leaks, no explanation for the sound. The dripping appears without warning and stops just as suddenly. Sometimes it seems close, just beyond a doorway. Other times it echoes from deep within the building. The irregular rhythm makes it impossible to ignore. People pause instinctively, listening, waiting for the next drop that may or may not come. As one moves deeper into the courthouse, the atmosphere grows heavier. Corridors feel longer, darker. The air seems thicker, resisting movement. In these spaces, visitors report hearing whispers emerging from the shadows. The voices are faint and close, speaking softly as though afraid to be overheard. The whispers often sound like names being spoken. Not shouted. Not repeated. Just quietly called, one at a time. Those who hear the whispers often freeze in place. A sudden chill moves through the room, and the sense of being watched becomes difficult to ignore. The whispers fade if acknowledged, but the unease they leave behind remains. Many visitors choose not to answer back. There is a shared instinct to remain silent, as though responding might invite something closer. The darkness in the corners of rooms feels deeper after the whispers stop, as though the building itself is listening for a reply. The courthouse halls feel crowded despite being empty. Shadows cling to doorways and stairwells. Even in daylight, some areas appear dimmer than others, as though light avoids them. The sense of presence grows stronger near the lower levels of the building. The basement is widely avoided by those familiar with the courthouse. The sound of dripping is strongest here, echoing against concrete and stone. The smell of earth and age intensifies with every step downward. Few people stay long in the basement. The feeling there is oppressive, pressing in on the chest and shoulders. Breathing feels shallow. Thoughts become unsettled. Some describe a sensation of being surrounded, even when standing alone in the open space. Whispers are reported more frequently below ground. They seem closer, more personal. Visitors describe the feeling that something is standing just behind them, close enough to feel warmth or movement, yet never visible. Turning around reveals only empty space and deep shadow. The history of the courthouse is often cited as a reason for its unsettling atmosphere. Situated near river routes, it processed countless cases tied to travel, trade, and conflict. People arrived here at their most desperate moments. Some waited in uncertainty. Others left carrying life-altering outcomes. The emotional weight of those moments did not simply disappear when the building was abandoned. The dripping water is sometimes interpreted as a memory of the nearby river, echoing through stone long after the flow has changed. The whispers are thought by some to be fragments of voices that once filled the halls, repeating themselves in the absence of listeners. Those who leave the courthouse often report lingering unease. The sounds follow them in memory. The drip. The whispered names. The silence that presses in afterward. Some feel drained, as though the building took something from them quietly. Even outside, the sense of relief comes slowly. Fresh air feels lighter. Sounds return to normal. Yet many glance back at the structure, uneasy with how still it appears. At night, the building becomes darker and more imposing. Windows reflect nothing but blackness. The whispers are said to carry farther in the silence. The dripping sounds echo longer. Most people refuse to enter after sunset. By morning, the courthouse returns to its quiet, lifeless appearance. No sounds. No movement. Just an old building standing near forgotten routes of water and travel. To a casual observer, it may seem like nothing more than a relic of the past. But those who have walked its halls know the difference. The abandoned Washington County Courthouse is not silent. It speaks softly through sound and shadow. It remembers the flow of water, the passing of names, and the weight of judgment that once filled its rooms. The basement remains avoided for a reason. The whispers are not meant to be answered. And the dripping continues, echoing through dry pipes and empty halls, reminding visitors that some places never truly let go of what they have witnessed. The old white county courthouse stands at the center of town with a presence that locals have learned not to ignore. Its stone exterior is worn smooth by time, and its windows look out with a quiet seriousness that feels unchanged by passing years. Locals have learned not to ignore the building carries a reputation, spoken about carefully and often in lowered voices. It is not abandoned, yet it feels removed from the ordinary rhythm of life around it. The courthouse was built to enforce order, and that purpose still seems woven into its walls. Thick doors, narrow corridors, and iron fixtures give the interior a sense of control and restraint. When people step inside, they often remark on how the air feels different. As if the building holds on to its own atmosphere, separate from the outside world. Footsteps echo sharply on the floors, even when the halls are empty. Sound carries farther than expected, repeating itself and returning from directions that make no sense. The courthouse does not feel hostile, but it does feel alert. One of the most commonly reported sounds is the jangling of keys. The noise is unmistakable. A soft metallic clatter, rhythmic and deliberate, like a key ring moving at a steady pace. People hear it coming from behind doors, down stairwells, or just out of sight at the end of a hallway. When visitors follow the noise, they find nothing. No open doors. No people. No explanation. The sound feels purposeful rather than random. It does not resemble loose metal shifting or old fixtures moving. The lower levels of the courthouse hold the old jail area, a space that feels particularly tense. The air is colder here, and the walls seem to close in. Iron bars cast long shadows, and the silence feels dense, pressing inward. It is in this area that some visitors report hearing a jail door slam shut without warning. The sound is sudden and forceful, echoing sharply through the stone corridors. Afterward, the silence feels absolute. No footsteps follow. No voices call out. Visitors rush to check the cells, finding every door exactly as it was before. The bars remain still. The locks untouched. Yet the echo of the slam lingers in the mind long after the sound itself has faded. Some locals claim that a guard still patrols the halls. They describe seeing a figure moving slowly through the courthouse, dressed in dark clothing, posture upright and disciplined. The figure does not interact with anyone. It simply walks its route, passing doorways and disappearing around corners. Those who glimpse the guard often question what they saw. The figure appears solid at first, then fades or vanishes when looked at directly. No sound accompanies the movement. No shadow remains. The hallways return to stillness as if nothing passed through them. Others report sensing the presence of the guard without seeing anything. A feeling of being watched. The awareness of someone just out of view. The faint sound of keys, then silence. These moments often occur when the building is quietest, when attention is drawn inward. Staff members and long-time locals speak cautiously about these experiences. Many have their own stories, shared only with people they trust. Some avoid certain hallways entirely. Others refuse to be inside the courthouse alone after dark. The reputation is not exaggerated for drama. It is respected. What makes the old White County Courthouse unsettling is the consistency of these reports. Different people, at different times, describe the same sounds and sightings. The keys. The slammed jail door. The silent patrol. None of it feels random. It feels structured, as if following rules that no longer exist. The building seems tied to routine. To duty. To order enforced without emotion. Even now, long after its busiest days have passed, it feels as though someone is still making sure everything is in place. As evening approaches, the courthouse grows quieter. Sunlight fades from the windows, and shadows stretch across the floors. The sounds of town life fall away, leaving only the subtle noises of the building itself. This is when the atmosphere feels strongest. People describe an unease that builds slowly. Not panic, but awareness. That movement should be careful. That silence is expected. That the building is paying attention. Some visitors leave quickly, unable to explain why staying feels wrong. Others remain, trying to understand what they are experiencing. A few hear the keys one last time before stepping outside. The sound fading behind them as the door closes. Outside, the air feels lighter. The weight lifts. The courthouse looks ordinary again. Its reputation hidden behind stone and windows. Yet the memory of being inside lingers. The old white county courthouse continues to stand as it always has, quiet and watchful. It does not announce its presence. It does not chase those who enter. It simply maintains its order, holding on to echoes of keys, slammed doors, and silent patrols. For locals, the building is more than a historic landmark. It is a reminder that some places never fully release their purpose. That authority, once given form, can remain long after the people who enforced it are gone. And for those who walk its halls and hear the unmistakable sound of keys jangling in the distance, the courthouse leaves a lasting impression. A sense that the guard is still on duty. That the cells are still being checked. And that the old white county courthouse is never truly empty. The abandoned Izard County Courthouse sits quietly off the familiar paths of daily life, its presence softened by years of neglect and encroaching time. Stepping inside feels like crossing into a different pace of time. The air is still, carrying the scent of dust and aged wood. Light enters only where windows remain uncovered, falling in narrow bands across the floor. Each sound made within the building seems to hesitate, echoing briefly before being swallowed by silence. The courthouse does not greet visitors. It simply waits. This place once held lives at their most vulnerable moments. Trials unfolded here during years when uncertainty and hardship shaped everyday existence. People stood before the bench carrying fear, hope, and desperation in equal measure. The courtroom bore witness to decisions that could not be undone, outcomes that followed individuals long after they left the building. Now, the courtroom is empty. Benches sit in quiet rows, their surfaces worn smooth by countless hours of waiting. The judge's bench stands elevated, stripped of its former presence. The defendante's area feels especially heavy, marked not by objects, but by atmosphere alone. Visitors who stand near that space often report hearing something unexpected. Low murmured prayers drift through the room, soft and strained, as if spoken under breath. The sound carries no clear words, only the rhythm of pleading and hope. It rises gently, then fades, returning again after a pause. Those who hear it often hold still, afraid that movement might interrupt something deeply personal. They are not loud. They do not echo dramatically. Instead, they feel close, intimate, as though whispered by someone standing just out of sight. When visitors listen closely, the sound diminishes, leaving behind an unsettling quiet that feels charged with emotion. Even on warm days, the temperature drops noticeably in certain areas of the courtroom. The cold does not spread evenly. It settles low and close to the seating, clinging to the floor and rising slowly, as if reluctant to leave. Shadows deepen here, thickening around the benches where people once waited for judgment. These shadows do not behave like ordinary darkness. They appear heavier, more defined, pooling in ways that feel deliberate. Light struggles to reach into these spaces. And when it does, the shadows shift only slightly, refusing to fully retreat. Visitors often feel drawn to look away, unsettled by the sense that these shadows are more than absence. The feeling of regret is intense. It settles over the room without warning, pressing into the chest and slowing breath. This emotion does not feel personal at first. It arrives fully formed, as if carried by the space itself. Some describe it as sorrow mixed with acceptance. Others feel a deep longing, paired with the sense that something important was lost here. The longer people remain, the stronger the sensation becomes. Thoughts turn inward. Movement feels heavier. Time seems to stretch, making it difficult to judge how long one has been standing still. The courtroom feels less like a room and more like a container, holding emotions that have nowhere else to go. The abandoned Izard County Courthouse feels different from other forgotten buildings. There is no chaos here. No sudden noises or aggressive disturbances. Everything unfolds quietly, restrained by an unseen boundary. The murmured prayers never rise into cries. The cold shadows never rush or chase. The regret remains steady, present but controlled. Some believe this restraint reflects the nature of the place. Courtrooms were built for order, even in moments of great emotion. Voices were measured. Movements were restricted. Outcomes were delivered calmly, regardless of their impact. That discipline seems to have shaped what remains. Visitors often describe a sense of being observed. Not by a figure or presence, but by memory itself. The room feels aware of attention, responding subtly when someone lingers too long near the defendante's area. The air thickens slightly. The cold deepens. The prayers return, quieter but more persistent. Caretakers and locals speak of similar experiences. They mention moments when the building feels especially heavy, times when entering alone feels intrusive. Some avoid the courtroom altogether, choosing to remain near entrances or hallways where the atmosphere feels lighter, though never fully at ease. Hallways outside the courtroom offer little relief. The same stillness follows, though the regret softens slightly. Footsteps echo longer than expected, returning from places unseen. Doors stand open or closed without explanation, their positions unchanged yet somehow significant. Morning light alters the experience, but does not erase it. Sunlight warms the floor and weakens the shadows near the benches. The murmured prayers become harder to hear, fading into memory. The sense of regret loosens its hold just enough to breathe freely again. Yet even in daylight, the courtroom does not feel empty. It feels paused. The abandoned Izard County Courthouse holds moments suspended between action and acceptance. The prayers whispered here were never answered in ways that satisfied everyone. The outcomes delivered carried weight that lingered long after the doors closed. Those who visit often leave quietly. Conversations feel unnecessary. The experience encourages reflection rather than discussion. Many carry the feeling with them long after stepping back into the open air, unsure how to name what they encountered. The cold settles into familiar places. And near the defendante's area, the murmured prayers may rise softly, carried on air that feels too heavy to ignore. The building does not demand attention or belief. It does not seek to frighten or impress. It simply exists, holding the emotional residue of countless moments shaped by regret, hope, and quiet pleading. Hidden by time, the abandoned Izard County Courthouse remains forgotten by many. But within its silent walls, the past continues to speak in hushed voices, cold shadows, and a regret so deep it has nowhere left to go. The old Polk County Courthouse stands with an uneasy presence, its walls seeming to hold motion even when nothing is moving. From the outside, the structure appears solid and composed, shaped by an era that valued order and authority. Yet stepping closer, many sense a subtle tension, as if the building itself is unsettled, unable to rest. Inside, the air feels active. It does not sit quietly in corners or drift gently through hallways. Instead, it feels stirred, constantly shifting. Footsteps echo sharply. But the echoes do not fade as expected. They seem to linger, overlapping with other sounds that do not belong to anyone present. Visitors often report the feeling of movement behind them. It begins as a mild awareness, the sense that someone is walking just out of sight. Turning around reveals empty corridors and still doorways. The sensation does not disappear. It follows, staying just close enough to remain unsettling. Walking through the halls, this awareness grows stronger. The courtroom is where the unrest becomes most noticeable. The room is spacious, designed to focus attention forward, yet it feels crowded with unseen activity. Sound behaves unpredictably here. Even quiet footsteps seem amplified, bouncing from wall to wall before dissolving into a restless hush. Pausing does not make it stop. Standing still only sharpens the sensation, making the absence of a visible source more disturbing. It is in this space that visitors sometimes hear the sound of paper tearing. The noise is sudden and distinct, sharp enough to cut through the silence. It resembles thick documents being ripped apart, slow and deliberate rather than hurried. The sound leaves no physical trace, yet it carries a sense of intent, as if something important is being undone or erased. Some hear the tearing more than once during a visit. Others hear it only a single time, but remember it clearly long after. The sound often comes from near the front of the courtroom, close to where records and decisions once held power. Listening closely reveals nothing further, only the heavy quiet that follows. Alongside these sounds, many experience sudden emotional shifts. Anger rises without warning, sharp and intense. It does not feel directed at anyone or anything specific. It simply appears, filling the chest and tightening the jaw. Thoughts become restless, impatient, and confrontational. This anger surprises those who feel it. Visitors describe entering the courthouse calm and curious, only to feel irritated or tense moments later. The emotion feels foreign, out of place, as though it does not belong to them. Stepping outside often brings relief, the anger fading as quickly as it arrived. The sensation is strongest in the courtroom and nearby offices. Standing still in these areas can make the feeling intensify. Movement provides only brief distraction. The emotion lingers until leaving the space entirely. Staff members and locals familiar with the courthouse acknowledge its restless atmosphere. They speak of it with caution, often choosing their words carefully. Some admit they feel unsettled during routine visits, sensing agitation in the building. The Old County Courthouse was once a place of argument, dispute, and consequence. Voices were raised here. Papers were signed, rejected, and destroyed. Decisions were contested. The emotional weight of those moments did not fade easily. Many believe the building absorbed that tension, holding on to it long after its official role ended. The constant sensation of movement may be tied to that history. The courthouse feels as though it is replaying fragments of past activity, footsteps that never reached a destination, motions that never found resolution. The sound of paper tearing carries its own symbolism. Records once held power here. Documents changed lives. To hear them torn, even without seeing them, creates an unsettling sense of loss and conflict. The sound feels less like random noise and more like an echo of unresolved action. Skeptics point to practical explanations. Old buildings amplify sound. Wood and stone shift with temperature. Emotional reactions can be influenced by environment and expectation. These reports come from people with no connection to one another, often shared only after discovering others felt the same. The feeling of movement behind them. The tearing sound in the courtroom. The sudden anger that fades upon leaving. These reports come from people with no connection to one another, often shared only after discovering others felt the same. The building itself seems unwilling to be quiet. Even when completely empty, it feels active, as though something inside is constantly adjusting, pacing, or reacting. Spending extended time inside can be exhausting. Visitors describe feeling drained, irritable, and eager to leave. The courthouse does not invite lingering. It seems to push people away, not through fear, but through emotional pressure. Once outside, the contrast is striking. The air feels lighter. Breathing deepens. The anger dissolves. The sensation of being followed by unseen movement. The sharp sound of paper tearing through silence. The sudden surge of emotion with no clear cause. Looking back at the courthouse, it appears unchanged, calm and still, offering no hint of the unrest within. The old Polk County Courthouse may no longer serve its original purpose, but it has not found peace. But it has not found peace. For those who enter, the experience feels less like visiting an abandoned building, and more like stepping into a space where past tensions continue to shift and stir, waiting to be felt once again. The abandoned Madison County Courthouse stands alone beneath an open sky, its outlines softened by darkness and distance. Streetlights do not reach its walls. The courthouse sits in shadow, silent and still, as if waiting for something that no longer arrives. By day, the structure appears worn but ordinary. Windows are dark, doors locked, halls empty. That calm does not last after sunset. When night falls, the courthouse changes in subtle but unmistakable ways. The air grows heavier inside, and sound behaves differently. Footsteps echo longer than they should. Even breathing feels louder in the silence. Visitors who enter after dark often describe the sense that the building is not empty, only quiet. The main courtroom is where the most unsettling reports come from. In the darkness, when the room should be completely vacant, a faint glow sometimes appears. It does not switch on suddenly like electric light. Instead, it builds slowly, revealing shapes where none existed moments before. Benches take form. The judge's stand becomes visible. Desks and railings return, whole and intact, as if restored by memory alone. Then the figures appear. People seated in the gallery. Others standing near the center of the room. A presence behind the bench. Their shapes are clear enough to recognize posture and position, yet indistinct enough to resist detail. Faces are present but not fully defined. Clothing reflects another time, suggested by outline rather than texture. The figures do not acknowledge visitors. They do not react to movement or sound. They remain focused on one another, locked into a moment that feels suspended. Some appear to listen. Others stand as if waiting for instruction. The room feels full, alive with silent purpose. Those who witness this scene often freeze, unsure whether to step closer or retreat. The courtroom feels complete, active, and intensely focused, as if a proceeding is underway without sound. The atmosphere becomes charged, heavy with expectation. Then, just as gradually as it formed, the scene begins to dissolve. Figures fade first. Their outlines soften, losing definition until they blend into the darkness. Benches and desks follow, their edges blurring before disappearing entirely. The light recedes, leaving the room exactly as it was before. Empty. Dark. Silent. The entire experience lasts only moments, rarely more than a minute. When it ends, the courtroom shows no sign of change. Dust remains undisturbed. Furniture that once appeared whole is again broken or missing. The room returns to abandonment, as though nothing occurred. Those who investigate find no explanation. Multiple visitors report seeing the same arrangement. The same positions. The same sense of order. People unfamiliar with the courthouse describe identical layouts, even when details are no longer visible in daylight. The consistency troubles those who hear the stories. The courthouse was once a place of intense focus. Decisions made here carried lasting consequences. Voices rose and fell. Tension filled the air. Lives were altered within those walls. When the building was closed, those moments did not simply vanish. They remained, layered into the space. At night, it feels as though the courthouse remembers. Some believe the building is replaying fragments of its past, assembling them briefly before letting them fade. Others describe the experience as walking into a memory that does not belong to the present. Whatever the explanation, the effect is powerful and deeply unsettling. Visitors who see the courtroom appear often leave shaken. Many struggle to speak immediately afterward. The silence feels intentional, as if words would break something fragile. Some sit quietly outside, staring back at the building, uncertain whether they truly witnessed what they remember so clearly. The experience does not feel threatening. No panic, no sudden movement, no sense of danger. Instead, it carries a deep emotional weight. A feeling of finality. As if the past is being shown one last time before disappearing again. Those who return on later nights do not always see the same scene. Sometimes nothing happens at all. Other times, faint shapes appear without fully forming. The courthouse does not perform on command. It reveals itself when it chooses. The rest of the building remains quiet during these moments. Hallways do not echo. Doors do not move. The activity centers entirely within the courtroom, as though that space holds the strongest memory. By the early hours of morning, the courthouse becomes inert once more. Darkness settles fully. The air lightens. Any lingering presence withdraws. When daylight returns, the building looks unchanged, empty, and forgotten. Yet those who have seen the courtroom come alive know that something remains. They remember the way the room filled without sound. The figures that appeared with purpose and restraint. The sense that they were witnessing something not meant to last. The impression stays vivid. The abandoned Madison County Courthouse continues to stand silent under the stars, holding its past close. It does not announce itself. It does not demand attention. It waits. And on certain nights, when the world is quiet enough, the courthouse allows its history to surface once more. A full courtroom appears. Figures take their places. The moment unfolds in silence. Then it fades away, leaving only darkness, dust, and the unmistakable feeling that the past has played out one last time before disappearing again. Thank you for walking through the haunted abandoned courthouses of Arkansas with me tonight. These buildings were meant to deliver justice, but not every story ended fairly. Walls remember voices. Floors remember footsteps. And some verdicts refuse to rest. If you ever pass an old courthouse late at night, listen carefully. You may hear echoes of trials long concluded, and souls still waiting for closure. Would you dare step inside an abandoned courthouse after dark, knowing the walls may still be listening, or would you choose to walk away before judgment finds you? Rest well, my friend. Until our next haunted journey.